Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. On today's episode, we're at Krzeczyn Mały Palace in the Polish western countryside. We're going to be meeting the Nicolay family and telling you all about this historic palace and the surrounding area.
The palace in Krzeczyn Mały is a Baroque palace from the 18th century. In 1997, a French family coming from Belgium, Count and Countess Guillain de Nicolay, bought the estate and started renovating it. Since 5 years, their son, Count Charles de Nicolay, is patiently taking care of their new house in Poland. In our episodes, he will tell us about the history of the palace as well as about his family.
So, in a sense, like he felt that he was happy that you were, or your family were kind of reviving the place and actually breathing new life into it rather than it just kind of falling into disrepair and losing kind of purpose.
I think so, because he came back for the first time after nearly 50 years in 91 or 92, before my parents bought it. And he saw in which appalling state it was. We could see from this room the sun, which we can't see now because there are 2 stories of a building.
Right.
And all the wooden furniture was burned by local people for heating. The gardens were a complete jungle because it had no one had done anything for a long time. And so he saw the beginning really of what my parents were doing. It was still in a bad state, but he was really happy that someone did something with the house of his childhood.
And was it always historically used by families who were, you know, just leading a family life, or
I think
did it
so.
have different purpose?
That was the purpose of building this country house. Well, apart from after the war, when it was a prison and a school and offices. And
yeah, I mean, I can imagine though, because there's so many rooms, it's difficult for us to kind of show so many different parts and size of the place. All right then, so really the most radical change was during kind of, or after the Second World War. So was it damaged at all during that period, or?
It wasn't damaged during the war, although the front came quite close from here. It went through Lubin, the big town, which is 10 kilometers from here. But it was quite destroyed. Not destroyed, but it had a lack of
care, yeah?
Lack of care, exactly. Exactly, and burning the furniture. Because people after the war, when it became Polish here, they weren't sure that the Germans wouldn't come back in 2, 3, 4 years. You never know. So they were quite afraid that if the Germans come back, why should we care about all these places? And it's the same with the houses in the village.
So your family purchased the house kind of late 1990s. 97. Could you tell us a little bit background to your family, because they're not originally Polish?
My parents used to live in, and still live now again, in our country house in Belgium, in Lupwijn, which is 30 kilometers in the south of Brussels. Because my father got a job in Brussels and had this house there, which was my great-grandfather's, who lived in Paris. And my father asked him if they could live there. And we had a Polish priest there, Father Pastuszak, who was there in Belgium. He was from the KUL, Katolicki Uniwersytet Lubelski, and he had, for some political problems, to go away from Poland in the 80s. He was sent to Cameroon, I think, as a missionary. And he got ill there, and as Poland didn't have colonies, they didn't have the hospitals that... and so in Belgium, he was healed, yes, and he was a priest of the village. And there were, between Louvain-la-Neuve, the Belgium Catholic University, and KUL, there were some exchanges. And he, as we have there a big house, he always used to ask my parents, if Professor something, the sister something, can stay for 2 or 3 days at our house. Some of them stayed 3 or 4 days, some of them quite longer. Mm-hmm. And during all these 80s, my parents got like this to know many Polish people from the University of Lublin and others. And in the 90s, when the political regime changed here and it was easier to travel, they started to visit these people who became friends. And they decided to buy something here in Poland because they fell in love with Poland. And so they went around Poland and finally found this place here in Krzeczyn Mały. Mm-hmm. And that's why.